Nothing brings out the Flintstone in all of us like a big bone with a hunk of beef known as a short rib. When it comes to braising, there is no better cut of beef. And when it comes to beef, there is no better braising liquid than beer. Add some caramelized onions and mustard and you've got yourself a fantastic stew from Belgium called Carbonnade Flamande. But first, let's learn all about the tricks stores play on you when selling you short ribs. Whenever you see boneless short ribs at, say, Costco, you should always be suspicious that what they're really selling is chuck, the shoulder, cut into rectangular strips. If you want to make sure that what you're cooking is indeed short ribs, buy them on the bone. Mine are somewhat long because I bought them at a restaurant supply store. Normally, they'd be cut in half. In the Boston area, Whole Foods is the most likely of all supermarket chains to carry short ribs. I much prefer their grain-fed short ribs to grass-fed because grain-fed have more meat and more marbling. Just to clarify, thick layers of fat are not marbling. Marbling are the little specks of fat inside the muscle. These short ribs don't offer much marbling, but that's all I could get. Natural light and good meat are in short supply in the Boston area, so if you have one of those on the day you're shooting your video, you roll with what you've got. Insert your boning knife under the silver skin close to the right edge and cut to the right to give yourself a flap. Pull on the flap and cut to the left. Keep pointing the edge of your knife into the flap so that you don't waste much meat. If you're left-handed, do a mirror image of this procedure. Make a flap on the left and then cut to the right. The reason we're removing the silver skin is that it doesn't taste good even after hours of cooking. If fitting all these ribs with their bones into one pot is going to be difficult, you can cut the meat off the bone and save the bones for stock. We'll make beef stock in a separate video. Preheat the oven to 300 degrees and set a large skillet or Dutch oven over high heat with 1 tablespoon of oil. I'm using grapeseed, but safflower and canola are also great for high heat. This Cuisinart pan is one of the most used braising vessels in my kitchen because it has a big surface area for browning and tall sides that can hold plenty of liquid. I'll link to it below. While the pan is heating up, dry the meat thoroughly on paper towels. Dampness prevents browning and encourages sticking, so be thorough. Sprinkle with salt and pepper on all sides, but be very stingy. During the braising time, the meat shrinks a lot and the flavor ends up very concentrated. So very little salt goes a very long way. When the oil starts to shimmer, place the short ribs in the pan, meat side down, and cook without disturbing until they brown. I'm crowding the pan a bit, which is a no-no, but sometimes you do what you have to do. Once the ribs browned and I stood them on their sides, plenty of space opened up to brown my little pieces. When all the meat sides are brown, set the ribs bone side down and add lots of sliced yellow onions sprinkled with a bit of salt. Let's tuck a couple of bay leaves into the pan. At this point in the video, I realized that I was out of Belgian-style ale, but I did find something in the house called Indian Pale Ale, and I figured, hey, this one's ale, that one's ale. After 3 hours in the oven, who'll ever know the difference? Well, I was wrong. Even after 3 hours of cooking, my braise still had slight bitterness, which never happens with Belgian-style ales. So, as always, do as I say, not as I do. Your beer doesn't have to be from Belgium, but it does have to be Belgium-style. So let's pretend we're using Belgium-style ale and pour it right over the onions. We'll need roughly 2 cups of beer and 2 cups of chicken stock or beef stock. Preferably salt-free homemade, or at least low sodium if using store-bought. You need enough liquid to come roughly halfway up your short ribs. If your pan is too large, you'll need to use extra liquid, so choose a pan that fits your meat snugly. Bring the liquid to a simmer, cover the pan, and place in a 300-degree oven. Start checking for doneness after 3 hours, but don't be surprised if it takes 4. The short ribs are done when you can pull them apart with a fork and easily get all the way to the bone. When in doubt, better to overcook than undercook. The next step is very important if you want tasty short ribs. Cool them until lukewarm in their liquid. Braised meats shed all their moisture into the sauce, and letting them cool in the sauce helps them reabsorb it. I prefer to flip the ribs meat side down for cooling. The bones will fall right out and you can easily discard them or save them for stock. It's been about 2 hours and my short ribs are just warm. I'll pull out and discard the bones and trim the connective tissue that was holding the short ribs to the bone. It has a bit of meat that you can pull out with your fingers. I'll collect all the meat in a container and strain the braising liquid through a colander. Discard the bay leaves and return the onions to the pan. Set it over high heat and cook, stirring occasionally until onions become jammy, about 5 to 10 minutes. Tilt the pan, scoop the onions to the top and let the fat drain for a couple of minutes. Then spread the onions over short ribs and refrigerate the meat and the sauce overnight. Only cover the containers after everything is cold. As any braise, short ribs taste a lot better the next day. They can be kept in the fridge for 5 days or frozen for several months. After the sauce is chilled, it's very easy to degrease. If you plan on freezing, do it after degreasing the sauce. Pour the sauce into a 10-inch skillet and bring to a boil over high heat. Taste for salt and keep boiling until you're happy with the salt level. The goal is to get the sauce slightly syrupy, but not go so far that it gets too salty. After about 10 minutes, my sauce is just right, so I'm going to add my short ribs. But first, I want to scrape off some of solidified fat from the bottom of the meat to avoid making the sauce greasy. Cover the pan and cook on low heat for about 10 minutes or until the short ribs feel soft and warm inside. I just realized that my sauce needed acidity, so I added a drizzle of pomegranate molasses to fix that, but a splash of your favorite vinegar would work as well. The final step involves slathering the meat with mustard and putting it under the broiler. Since I'm saving these short ribs for my family, I'll only do one piece for now. But normally you can do this step right in the skillet. Move the onions off the meat and spread a small dollop of Dijon mustard on top. Pop under the broiler for a few minutes until the mustard gets brown and serve. I'll serve mine with little homemade noodles called spätzle. I can't think of a better meal for a cold day than this spoon-tender beef with sweet, jammy onions. I have a confession to make. I actually hate beer. That's my ignorance about it. But this just might be my favorite braised beef dish. Spätzle and beef stock videos are coming. So don't forget to subscribe to Helen's Kitchen channel, and if you're ever in the Boston area, maybe I'll see you in one of my classes.